Let me be real with you about something most men only understand when it's already too late. Silence carries weight. When you suddenly stop talking to a woman, you might think you're just creating space, proving a point, or protecting your pride. But here's what actually happens. Silence doesn't pause anything. It moves her forward. A lot changes in that quiet space. She's not sitting around waiting for your message to appear. She's processing, thinking, and most importantly, evolving. And by the time you decide to come back, she may not be the same woman you left. When a man goes quiet without explanation, something shifts inside her. At first, she might be confused. She checks her phone more than usual, wonders if you're busy, if something happened, or if she somehow missed your message. But when the silence stretches beyond what feels normal, her mindset changes. A woman with emotional awareness doesn't just sit in confusion. She starts reflecting deeply. She begins asking herself honest questions. Was I the only one truly invested? Was this connection real, or did I convince myself it was? Did I ignore signs that something wasn't right just because I wanted it to work? Silence creates space for reflection, and reflection brings clarity. Without your words, she starts focusing on your actions. She replays how you treated her, whether she felt valued or if she was always the one chasing your attention. What many men don't realize is that distance can create independence. That quiet space allows her to step back and see things clearly. What once felt like love might now feel like confusion. What once felt exciting might now feel unbalanced. As time passes, she starts questioning whether the connection truly matched her values or if it was just convenient. At first, this process isn't filled with anger. It's usually sadness, disappointment, maybe even a little guilt. She might wonder if she did something wrong, if she should have acted differently. But as the silence continues with no explanation, that guilt fades. In its place, awareness grows. She starts looking at her own patterns, how she showed up, what she tolerated, and what she ignored. If she's emotionally strong, she doesn't stay stuck blaming you or herself. She uses that silence to grow. She starts raising her standards. Instead of wondering why you're not calling, she starts asking why she accepted inconsistency in the first place. She remembers moments where she ignored her intuition just to keep things smooth. Times where she gave more than she received. Slowly, her emotional attachment begins to fade. Not out of anger, but out of understanding. That silence becomes like a mirror. And in that reflection, she stops seeing the fantasy and starts seeing the truth. She notices the imbalance, the mixed signals, the time she had to shrink herself just to keep your attention. What once felt like love begins to look more like self-sacrifice. And when she reaches that point, something powerful happens. She doesn't chase. She doesn't beg for answers. She rebuilds herself, focusing on understanding who she is and what she truly deserves. You might think that by pulling away you're in control, that your silence will make her chase you, worry about losing you, or question her worth. But a woman who understands her value doesn't beg for attention. Instead, she does something unexpected. She matches your distance. At first, she might try to reach out once or twice, thinking something serious could have happened. She may try to keep communication open because that's what emotionally aware people do. They look for clarity. But once she realizes your silence is intentional, her energy changes. A woman who respects herself won't chase someone who is pulling away. Yes, she may feel hurt or confused, but once she understands that your silence is a choice, she responds by stepping back. Not to play games, but to protect her peace. She won't keep texting, calling, or overextending herself for someone who can't even communicate the basics. So, she mirrors your silence. And what you might see as coldness is actually a boundary. When a woman cares, she gives deeply. Her time, her attention, her emotional presence. But when that effort feels one-sided, she adjusts. She stops initiating. She stops showing up for someone who isn't showing up for her. That shift can be surprising, especially if you were used to her always being there. Suddenly, her warmth feels missing. Her consistency fades. The woman who once replied quickly now takes her time. The one who brought energy into your life becomes quiet and focused on herself. Not because she's playing games, but because she understands that effort should be mutual. This is especially true for women who have done the inner work. They don't use silence to punish. They use it to protect their energy. They've learned that someone who truly wants to be in their life will show it through actions, not absence. So when you go silent and she responds by pulling back, it doesn't mean she doesn't care. It means she's grown. It means she's no longer accepting half-effort, mixed signals, or emotional inconsistency. She's no longer willing to carry a connection on her own. And in that distance, something deeper happens. Her focus shifts away from you and back to herself. She reconnects with her peace, her priorities, and her worth. The silence stops being about you and starts becoming about her, rediscovering who she is. Because when communication disappears without explanation, it doesn't just feel like space to her. It feels like a lack of respect. Communication isn't just about talking, it's about consideration. It's about making someone feel included, valued, and acknowledged. And when a man goes quiet without even a simple explanation, what she hears is that she wasn't important enough to be considered. Many women, especially those who've experienced emotional games before, recognize this pattern quickly. They're no longer willing to sit there trying to decode someone who chooses silence over honesty. Instead of chasing answers, they start forming their own conclusions. And those thoughts sound simple but firm. He's not serious. He doesn't value my time. He lacks the maturity to communicate. Some men will say they just needed space to think, and that's completely fair. Everyone needs time sometimes, but there's a difference between space and silence. Space includes communication. Silence without any explanation isn't thoughtful. It's careless. In a healthy, mature connection, stepping back doesn't look like disappearing. It sounds like, "I need a little time to clear my head, but I'll talk to you soon." That's what respect looks like in real life. Respect isn't only about big actions. It shows in small moments, especially when things feel uncertain. It's in how you handle distance, how you communicate even when you're not at your best. When you go quiet after building something meaningful, the message she hears is clear, even if you didn't say it out loud. It feels like she wasn't important enough to be considered. And the truth is, disinterest and disrespect can feel exactly the same. A woman who values herself won't stay around trying to figure out which one it is. She won't sit in confusion waiting for consistency from someone who keeps pulling away. Your intention doesn't matter as much as how your absence makes her feel, because impact always speaks louder than intention. She starts pouring into herself the same way she once poured into the connection. And that's where everything changes. She becomes more focused, more intentional. She starts to see clearly how much she was giving and how little she was receiving. That silence becomes a wake-up call, showing her that she had been neglecting herself to keep something alive that wasn't feeding her. Now she moves differently. She might start taking care of her body again, not for you, but for herself. She picks up goals she had put aside. She invests in her growth, her mindset, her peace. She surrounds herself with people who give back the same energy she offers. The emptiness you left behind doesn't stay empty. It gets filled with purpose. And here's what most men don't expect. When a woman grows after your silence, she doesn't just improve, she transforms. She begins to see herself differently. She realizes she was giving a version of herself that wasn't being valued. She starts questioning whether you ever deserved that level of care. Her standards rise not out of anger, but from understanding. She learns that love isn't about waiting for someone to return. It's about not losing yourself while loving someone else. The woman who once felt hurt by your absence now carries herself with strength. Not because she's pretending, but because she's genuinely okay. She learns to enjoy her own company. She stops checking her phone for your name. Not out of pride, but because her life is full again. Her energy changes and that shift becomes visible. Her happiness feels real. Her confidence grows. Without saying a word, she shows that she didn't break. She rebuilt. All of this happens in the space your silence created. What you thought was distance became her turning point. What you thought was nothing became everything for her growth. Because when she stops chasing answers and starts chasing purpose, her whole life shifts. Her time becomes valuable. Her energy becomes protected. Her heart becomes wiser. Emotionally mature women may be patient, but they don't give endless access. When a man goes silent, he might think he still holds the power, that he can return whenever he wants. But while he's quiet, she's making decisions, and sometimes that silence becomes the closure. There comes a point where she stops waiting. Not because she's upset, but because she realizes her life doesn't pause for someone else's uncertainty. Once she understands the silence is intentional, she begins deciding what's next with or without you. Her decision might not be loud. You may not get a long explanation. She may not even tell you she's stepping away. But slowly, she pulls her energy back emotionally, mentally, quietly. Not because she stopped caring, but because she realizes she was the only one holding it together. She starts asking herself deeper questions. Why am I holding on to someone who isn't showing up? Why am I waiting when I already see the truth? What am I afraid of losing that isn't choosing me? These aren't questions of weakness. They're signs of awareness, and once she reaches that clarity, she doesn't need a final conversation to move on. Because closure isn't always about words. It's about peace. It's about accepting what was missing and choosing better for herself. Her decision might be to walk away completely. It might be to detach while staying distant. Or it might be to fully focus on her own life. But whatever she chooses, it comes from clarity, not emotion. She's not trying to hurt you or prove a point. She's simply choosing herself when she wasn't being chosen. And that's the part many men don't see until it's already done. Silence doesn't always make her chase. Sometimes it makes her see clearly. And once she sees, everything changes. She protects her peace, matches your energy, focuses on herself, and moves forward without waiting. In the end, when you stop talking to her, you're not gaining control. You're showing her exactly where she stands. And once she understands that, she adjusts, because losing her was never about her leaving.